All right, this is the enough said way to make kombucha. And this is learned from thousands of years of study, and this is the end result. All right, so rule 4 is you have a gallon jug like this with a date on the top. We usually let the kombucha ferment for at least 7 days, usually 9 or 10 days. Nate just said 9. Either that means 9 days or he's German and he said no. I think it means 9 days. So the first step, we're going to bottle this. So we're going to teach you how to bottle it before, hold on a second if you'd be a dear Nate, before we make the tea. So step 1 is to take the grebe out of the thing and put it somewhere else. All right, so you take the paper towel off. There's our grebe. And some people, my sister for example, I had a grebe and I showed it to her and she started gagging and said, "Get that away from me." So if you're going to be moving the grebe, get somebody who doesn't gag. So you take the grebe out. That is what, a 1/2 inch thick? So you guys had a grebe at one point that was like 3 inches thick. You can always tear off a lot of it and throw out the extra. I think a 1/2 inch thick is pretty good. And then, so we take that out, and then that grebe, you're going to want to cover that in some of your kombucha. You saw Nate stirred the kombucha, and sometimes if it's really fermented, it starts to bubble over, so you need to be conscious of that. All right, so Nate's going to take some of this, let's say at least a 1/2 cup, at least so that the grebe or SCOBY is covered a smidge. So here we go. We've heard all the way up to 2 cups, but this is all we do so that it's covered by like a 1/4 inch of the kombucha. And then you're going to let that, we cover it with a paper towel. There's Nate. All right, so we use usually this brand of juice. What do we got? Santa Cruz. This is lemonade. Lemonade's a perennial favorite. Some people use
sticks, twigs, berries.
Twigs, turmeric, spices. We just use juice. So we usually make 8 bottles of kombucha from 1 gallon. 7. If you only get 7, that's fine. But here's what we do: we start pouring it, and we pour some juice in as a starter. And it's about that high is what we like. So you have these same bottles that we do. That looks to be a little over 1 inch of juice. And this becomes a subjective thing. What do you like? My daughter makes kombucha. She hasn't put any juice in it. She just drinks it straight. We like the juice. So this is how we bottle the kombucha. This is that grebe that we had with a little bit of fluid on it. We always put it in the sink underneath, so if you spill a little grebe or a little kombucha when you're pushing or pouring, it goes in there. Every drop counts of kombucha. So then we get it to like where the curve starts, or a little above. And then this is a practice thing, because when you're pouring in a funnel, there's going to be some that you'll just have to get used to. You'll get used to it in time. But that's the end result of a bottle. And then you cap it. Get it on fairly tight. And then there's a discussion as to whether you need to do a second fermentation. Sometimes you do a second fermentation, and that's capping it, and then you put it in a dark place. Supposedly you don't want sunshine on this, but some people make it in their windows, so there's a lot of discrepancy. This is just how we do it. This is our best practices. All right, so we made this tea. I don't think you have a stove, but you have an automatic hot water thing. So you're going to need a gallon of hot water, and then you're going to use this, I think we got you one of these T-balls, so it's relatively large. We fill it halfway with the kombucha mix that we got you. And if you want to reorder that, that's available from Amazon. That's what we think is the best kombucha tea mix. So now, Nate pours it through a strainer. I don't necessarily pour it through a strainer, so mine's a little chunkier than Nate's. And the pouring it through a strainer, that's really to keep little tiny tea leaves out. That's all that is. So, in there, he's right. That is hot tea, just came off the stove. And now there's one more thing you need to do before you let it cool. We need to add a cup of sugar. So there will come a time where you forget to put the sugar in. And your grebe, your Scooby, your SCOBY, your symbiotic community of bacteria and yeast, that's what Scooby or SCOBY stands for, will sink. And if your grebe ain't floating, our mantra is give it a little sugar. If your grebe ain't floating, there's a decent chance you forgot to put sugar in. So here we are later in the day. This is the final couple steps. So we still have our grebe sitting in the tea from the last batch. So we're going to take that grebe out of there, also called a Scooby or a SCOBY, and we're going to put it in this jar. Nate, go ahead. So once again, we do things, here's how we do it. We grab a grebe. And once again, I don't think I've mentioned this. Grebe is a Russian word for mushroom. So this is also called mushroom tea sometimes. All the names for this. But once again, that's so disgusting looking that it makes my sister gag. This just gets the sugar all mixed up, and hopefully the grebe, SCOBY, will float. Booger, that's another name for it. I do it slightly differently than Nate. I put the grebe in first, then I pour on the tea. But his is more poetic and like ballet, the way it spins. All right, the final step is to put a paper towel on top like that and put the day and date. And as we said, we usually let ours ferment for 7 to 10 days, and Nate said more dramatically 9 days. All right, I think that's it. Enjoy. Howdy, the last step that we do is we carbonate our kombucha. You don't have to, optional, but we do it. The stuff you buy in the store, which I think the biggest brand is GT's, that's carbonated. We talk about doing a fermentation and a second fermentation. That puts some bubbles in it, not enough. So we bought the Drink Mate. We like this better than the other brand, and that's what you guys have too. So you take this and you put your kombucha, you pour it in slowly. Sometimes the kombucha has a little booger in it, a little grebe, a little SCOBY. Nate likes to filter his. There wasn't much SCOBY in here, so I'm not greatly concerned. So we put it on here, and you give it 4 or more pumps. I'm going to do 6. That should be enough. You'll figure out how to work this Drink Mate. It's nice. And then these all function differently. This one that we have, if I press on this, I know I can get all the air out without this foam shooting out the top. The one I have at home, the foam shoots out the top. It's trial and error. I hope you got one like this. The foam doesn't shoot out the top, and you can take the pressure off pretty easily. You can wash that, or you can just rinse it off, because there's a little bit of kombucha on that, and it gets sticky. Put that back. Then you pour this like you pour a beer, like you learned in college. Pour it sideways to get rid of the head. Do it slowly. And this fills pretty much a pint glass. And Nate, I think, does it slightly differently. He does this through a sieve. Sieve. Inside joke. And then he might do that, but that's what we do. And then cheers. This is Nate's. That's why I didn't drink it. Thanks for watching.